In 1947, a pilot named Kenneth Arnold reported seeing 9 shining objects flying past Mount Rainier at impossible speeds. Almost overnight, the American public and the military became obsessed with the idea that physical, mechanical machines from another solar system were penetrating our atmosphere. For the next 2 decades, investigators operated under a single assumption. They spent their lives staring at the sky, waiting for spaceships to land on the White House lawn, and demanded physical evidence to prove it. This assumption locked in the extraterrestrial hypothesis. The consensus was that biological beings were traveling millions of light years across the galaxy, arriving here on scientific or exploratory missions to study humanity. By focusing exclusively on outer space, researchers ignored the strange data points accumulating on the ground, anomalies that suggested the phenomenon might be closer than any distant star system. John A. Mack. Keel was uniquely equipped to recognize a misdirection. Before becoming a freelance journalist, he was a stage magician who idolized Harry Houdini. He understood exactly how human perception could be hijacked to make the impossible seem real. He spent 4 years traveling through the Middle East and Southeast Asia, tracking down yogis and fakirs. He debunked the Indian rope trick and learned how mystics staged their supernatural feats, training himself to spot the mechanics behind an illusion. When Keel began investigating the American UFO viewing over 2,000 witnesses, the stories didn't add up to an interstellar survey mission. Witnesses described shape-shifting craft, ships falling apart in the sky, and occupants engaging in illogical behavior. Extraterrestrial explorers would not act like this. Keel concluded the phenomenon behaved less like a scientific expedition and more like a carefully staged waking dream. Instead of astronauts, Keel proposed we are interacting with ultraterrestrials. These ancient, non-human intelligences exist right here, coexisting directly alongside humanity. Human eyes process a narrow sliver of the electromagnetic spectrum. Keel called the vast, hidden frequencies surrounding it the superspectrum, arguing ultraterrestrials live permanently within these invisible zones. However, in specific window areas, the magnetic field fluctuates, naturally thinning the barrier to our visible world. These sudden sightings represent moments where local, invisible energy signatures briefly synchronize with our senses and bleed into our physical world. To become visible, these entities downshift their electromagnetic frequency. Keel called this transmogrification, precipitating energy into temporary physical matter so human eyes can see it, but they do not appear in their true form. They act as a Trojan horse, probing the human subconscious and extracting our cultural expectations to build a physical mask we can comprehend. In antiquity and the Middle Ages, observers expected supernatural encounters. When the phenomenon dropped into the visible spectrum, it manifested as religious figures, woodland fairies, or horned demons, perfectly mirroring the local belief systems of the time. As our culture modernized, the masks updated. In the 1890s, witnesses reported seeing mechanical airships. By the 1950s, as we explored space, the phenomenon shifted, appearing as sleek, metallic flying saucers. The actual physical shapes are meaningless decoys. The phenomenon constantly updates its disguise to interact with the current generation, maintaining contact without ever exposing what it actually is. Because these entities operate electromagnetically, their presence generates invisible turbulence in the environment. Keel observed that encountering the phenomenon is less like meeting a biological species and more like walking into an intense, localized weather system. In areas where UFO sightings spike, researchers document severe psychological side effects in the local population. Witnesses consistently report telepathic voices, sleep paralysis, poltergeist activity in their homes, and heavily manipulated memories. This invisible field actively prepares human consciousness before an event. People often experience a sudden wave of dread, bizarre dreams, or vivid premonitions in the days immediately leading up to a physical sighting. The physical craft serves as a secondary byproduct of a much larger, invisible psychological intrusion into the witness's mind. Keel eventually reached a deeply unsettling conclusion. He theorized that humanity is unknowingly trapped within a cosmic control system managed by these ultraterrestrials. Keel argued that by staging religious miracles or delivering prophetic messages tailored to a specific era, this intelligence could steer the direction of human culture, sustaining itself on the mass emotional energy these events generated. For decades, Keel was an isolated voice in the research community. Today, however, modern government and private investigations into anomalous phenomena deploy sensors specifically designed to measure these exact types of invisible atmospheric and electromagnetic fluctuations. The haunting John Keel spent his life tracking remains indigenous to this planet, hidden within the nocturnal depths of our own perception.